Coming up next is a guy who got the radio bug when he took a class trip to the legendary WWJ in Detroit. He was in the second grade. That's when this guy figured out what he wanted to do. He wanted to be on the radio, and he's done a great job on the radio. He's the longest running... Is that your award?
It's my wife. She threw the award down.
He's the longest running Morty radio personality in New York history, and I'm pretty sure that's true because I've been here a long time, and he was here when I got here. So, and he's still there. I'm talking about Jim Kerr. Congratulations. And to induct him tonight is another famous morning man named Jim, also from Detroit, Mr. Jim Harper, ladies and gentlemen.
Scott Shannon, ladies and gentlemen, doing a great job. Sure he had other places to be tonight. Just a pleasure to meet Scott. It's only fitting and divine justice that Jim Kerr's induction into the National Radio Hall of Fame comes at last. Most entertainers will admit privately that they are brilliantly playing a part, a character. Whether it's Jack Benny or Kim Kardashian, no one who's a star is really that person the fans love, at least not all the time. But that's where Jim Kerr is so unique, because Jim Kerr is Jim Kerr, all of the time. Not just on the air or at an event or when bonding with listeners. He is that guy because he can't be anybody else. That not only takes talent, it takes great courage. Most of us can't be that honest with an audience because deep down we fear that if we are ourselves on the air and there's any rejection, it's actually a rejection of us, the real us, and that would be devastating. We would crash. But Jim isn't afraid of crashing. He puts his real self out there every day, and his competence and talent have proven that for him, it's the only way that works. The National Radio Hall of Fame and Board, and you have chosen wisely, the longest running morning radio personality in New York City history, ladies and gentlemen, the People's Prince of New York radio, Mr. Jim Kerr.
He obtained his third-class FCC license before most people apply for a driver's license. Jim also found his way to rock radio stations early in life, 3 of them in Michigan and then in Orlando, before joining Keener 13 in Detroit. By the age of 19, he was playing progressive rock music in Morning Drive in Chicago, then moved to WLS at age 20. By 21, he'd moved on to New York City, becoming the youngest morning show host in the nation's largest market on WPLJ.
Hey, listen, if Howard says it, believe it.
Oh, and Jim, be careful. We could have some lightning today, too.
No. Yes.
Jim Kerr has now done mornings on 6 New York radio stations, including 15 years at PLJ, and as of this year, 15 years at Q104.3 WAXQ. He's earned the record for being the longest-running morning personality in New York City history.
But that's not all.
Along the way, he's been the companion for many morning drive commuters and friend to many rock musicians.
Paul McCartney may be from Liverpool, England, but we New Yorkers like to claim him as one of ours.
Let's give a warm welcome to the founding member and guitarist of Led Zeppelin, Mr. Jimmy Page.
Now, that was certainly a surprise. I never in a million years ever thought that I would hear you introducing me. I was all ready to introduce you.
After 10 a.m., he stays busy as a 32-year board member of HeartShare Human Services. Jim is a vice president of SAG-AFTRA and a board member of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, representing the interests of many peers. Jim Kerr. a 2018 inductee into the Radio Hall of Fame.
My privilege to induct you into the Radio Hall of Fame as a member of the class of 2018, Mr. Jim Kerr.
Thank you so much to Jim Harper. He came here from Detroit to share this evening with me. We shared the beginning of our career together. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment. And I'm also so touched that my sister and her entire family traveled from all over the country to be here tonight. And of course, my son and his family, they're here from Phoenix, Arizona. All my wonderful coworkers at WAXQ and iHeartMedia New York, and it was a surprise and one that was a very pleasant one. My friends from SAG-AFTRA are here as well. When one is the recipient of a great honor like admission into the National Radio Hall of Fame, it causes one to be reflective, to think back on one's career, to think back to the future, to think back to the very genesis. And in many interviews over the years, I've told this story about how I started in radio. I was 14 years old. I got a job at WYNZ in Ypsilanti, Michigan. I had a show on Saturdays. A couple of months after I started there, my friend Jim Harper joined me. He was even younger. He was 13 years old. I received a lot of media attention as the 14-year-old DJ. The Detroit News published a big article. The headline was, "He's producer, DJ, and superseller at 14." It was very heady for a junior high school kid, and I loved every minute of it. We had fun every weekend going to Ypsilanti and doing our radio shows. We felt like we were real radio guys. But one thing that I didn't really understand then, that I understand now, is that as a 14-year-old at WYNZ in Ypsilanti, I was a novelty, basically, and novelties wear off. So here's the part of the story that I have never revealed before tonight. In late 1968, just before my 16th birthday, when I was 15 years old, I was fired. I was called into the office by the new manager. The station had changed ownership, and told that the station was going to be moving in another direction. It was not the last time I ever heard those words. I had to make a decision. What am I going to do now? Quite frankly, there was not a real strong demand for fired 15-year-old DJs. But I did hear about a job in what was then a rural town in Michigan at a radio station, a job that apparently nobody wanted. The radio station had 3 full-time announcers. All 3 of them worked Monday through Friday. 2 of them worked on Saturday, one the morning shift, the other one the afternoon shift until sign-off. And then the 3rd announcer worked Sunday afternoon. That left one shift open, the Sunday morning shift. And apparently nobody wanted it. I don't know why. It paid very well. It was minimum wage. The job required signing the station on at 6 o'clock in the morning, running hours of recorded programs from various universities, a Lutheran Hour, Perspectives from the ABC Radio Network, a show from the United States Air Force, a couple of local church remotes. And then, as the owner of the station told me, Mrs. Bignell, she said, "And then when those programs are over, you can have your own show." I said, "Okay." Then she said, "Yeah, it'll be 9.5 minutes long." So I did the obvious thing. I jumped at the chance and I said, "Sign me up. I'm ready to go." And let me tell you, that show from 12:45 p.m. to 12:54:30 p.m., when the ABC Network News came on, became the highlight of my life. I loved those 9.5 minutes. I thought about those 9.5 minutes all week long. I wanted those 9.5 minutes to be the best 9.5 minutes on the radio anywhere in this planet. And there's a lot you can do in 9.5 minutes. There was a show open. I got to play 2 songs. I got to do a weather forecast. I got to talk about some events happening in the community that weekend. I got to do a commercial stop set. Occasionally there was even a live spot. And I got to play a jingle, too. I remember it went, Sunday music fills the air. Relax, no need to have a care. When you hear our music bright and gay, worries just float away with WHMI. And then, on would come Sergio Mendes in Brazil 66. I'd say, here's Fool on the Hill. I'm Jim Kerr. See you next Sunday. Well, that 9.5 minutes was so exciting to me that it motivated me to hitchhike 60 miles in the Michigan winter, sleep on the floor of a radio station that had no couch, get up before 6 o'clock in the morning, sign on the transmitter, and sit through 12 hours and 45 minutes of other programming before I got to do my 9.5-minute show. But that 9.5 minutes, 5 months later, led to a full-time job at that radio station. Several months after that, it took me to Ann Arbor, my first real rock station in a big college town. 2 years after that 9.5 minutes, I was at WKNR, the top 40 station in Detroit that I grew up listening to. 3 years after that 9.5 minutes, I was doing mornings in Chicago at WDAI for ABC. 4 years after that 9.5 minutes, I was at the mighty WLS. And 5 years after the 9.5 minutes, 5 years after taking the job nobody else wanted, I was able to accept the job that I can only dream of, doing morning radio in New York, and I've been here ever since. It's been 45 years. The reason I share this story with you is because I don't think my story is unique. I think every single one of you has your own 9.5-minute story. It may not be called 9.5 minutes, but there's something that happened in your life that may have seemed inconsequential and unimportant at the time that changed the trajectory of your entire existence. I wanted to share my story with you, and anytime you want, I would really be happy to hear your story, because your story would be just as interesting as mine. And I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Were it not for those 9.5 minutes, I would not have had the opportunity to share these 4 minutes tonight with you. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.